Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video you'll have the latest from the live radar, run for the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days. And once again, the next 5 days is looking dry and mild. Now it is looking pretty cloudy as well, unfortunately, and that will allow for a few bits and bobs of drizzle and lighter rain. We've seen some of that through Saturday today, and we'll see some of that as we head into the middle part of next week. Perhaps even a little bit more substantial rain, as we could see small little areas of low pressure, little bits of instability cropping up. Not expecting anything major, but the UKV is showing a little bit of precipitation around as well. As I said though, it is dry but cloudy, and hopefully we should see some breaks in that cloud. A bit of sunshine coming through, but it's not going to be widespread, and it's not going to be all the time. We are going to still see plenty of cloud around. Now, as we head into the longer range, we are still looking like high pressure is to dominate as we do head into the first week or two of November, but we are still seeing those interesting signs of a potential shift in the positioning of the higher pressure as we do head into the middle third of the month. Now, the GM and the ECM, though, only go out to day 10, but already here we're starting to potentially see some small changes, especially around that sort of North Atlantic and general Northern Hemisphere sort of pressure patterns, starting to see a few shifts. The GFS still seeing some quite substantial shifts beyond day 10, and interestingly today, the sort of last few images, the last few frames of the latest GFS are exactly a carbon copy of what we were seeing in our winter look ahead on Thursday, where we saw that high pressure moving out into the North Atlantic, extending towards Iceland and Greenland and encouraging north or northeasterly winds. And that was in sort of a 3, 4, 5 week time frame. And right at the end of this GFS run, we are seeing the exact same pattern. Could it just be a coincidence, or could it be something that the models are starting to see in that longer range outlook? We'll explore that in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link's in the description. And if you start on the live radar, you can see it's another very dry day. A few bits and bobs of rain around, a few bits of rain across parts of Scotland. And although it's bone dry from the radar for parts of England and Wales, just from being out there earlier today, there is a little bit of drizzle around even when we're not seeing any precipitation on radar. So that is something to take note. But again, it's just some passing thicker clouds. Shouldn't last too long and won't give that much rain, just a little bit of on and off lighter pulses. Temperatures are all right, not amazing, not bad. Temperatures around the low to mid-teens, again, slightly above average for the time of year. And because of all the trapped cloud around, those temperatures aren't allowed to rise as high as we'd hoped, and as high as they could be if we did see a bit of sunshine. 17, 18 degrees could be possible with the air masses we have around at the moment, but we're restricted more towards sort of 12 to 15 with a slightly fresher feel because of the cloud and gloominess. So as at the end of the video with the ensembles, we are 5 to 10 degrees above average with the upper air temperatures, but it doesn't quite feel like that because of all that cloud and gloom. You can see to our northeast where the lower pressure is being displaced to, up and over this big ridge of higher pressure, we're seeing winter properly arriving for much of Eastern Europe up towards Scandinavia, where it is turning very cold as we start to see Arctic plunges arriving on the eastern side of the high pressure system that is sitting over Western Europe. So we are starting to see winter arriving, but it's hundreds and hundreds of miles to our east. But could it come our way in the next few weeks? We'll have to wait and see. Now, do look at the latest UKV now. You can see as we head over the coming hours, you can see it's staying cloudy with a few bits and bobs of drizzle around, especially as we head through Sunday afternoon, perhaps in the north and the west. A few breaks in the cloud, but mostly it is fairly cloudy and fairly dry. A few showers again through Monday, through Tuesday, maybe a bit more sunshine breaking through, and Tuesday into Wednesday, a little bit more persistent rain, perhaps further southwards. Again, we're not talking about high levels of rainfall, but just a few areas of more organised precipitation as we see a little bit of instability, a bit of a system developing there. Really minor, but it is something to take note of in this very dry spell. And the same can be said for Wednesday to Thursday, a few pulses of some lighter rain around, but still a fairly dry and pleasant outlook, but very cloudy. If you look at the max temperatures, This afternoon, as I said, 12 to 15 degrees. Top temperatures would be higher if we saw a bit of sunshine, but unfortunately we're not seeing that. As we head into Sunday, it's a very similar story. Slightly fresher, maybe more towards 9 to 13, so a slightly chillier outlook with the wind coming slightly more in from the north or northeast. But again, it's a very light flow and it makes maybe a degree or two difference out there. But again, something to take note of. As we head into Monday, it's another average to above average day. Maybe 9 or 10 degrees further northwards, but it's slightly colder. But further southwards, again, 13, 14 degrees. And for Tuesday, a very similar story, maybe 15, 16 across the far south. And as we head into Wednesday, again, very similar, maybe even 16, 17 across the far southwest as we do start to draw some even milder air in. You can see that from the upper air temperatures. Some really quite mild air could move in at times, getting towards the double digits, which again isn't miraculous this time of year. But as we're heading to the period where we can start to see widespread frost, potentially some snow in the next few weeks, seeing it around those double digits is very mild indeed. Now, if you head into the longer range, we'll start to see the risk of some changes as we head towards the middle of the month. You can see high pressure firmly over the top of us, low pressure to our west, north, and to our east. So it's just surrounding the area of higher pressures. The high pressure is not moving northwards; it's kind of staying where it is, and that means we just stay with very similar conditions. But that starts to break down in the longer range. You see, the high pressure continues to stick over the top of us, low pressure to our west, north, and east, and that just continues. But as we head to beyond day 10, we start to see a bit of a shift. The low pressure in the North Atlantic starts to get squeezed away by another area of high pressure out to our west. We still see some high pressure up towards Scandinavia trying to encourage an easterly flow, but doesn't really fully come off with all that cold air staying out to our east. You can see a big cold pool there sat out towards Russia. But into the days following this, if we go back to the pressure, that high pressure that sat over the top of us degrades away and gets replaced by a big ridge of high pressure out in the North Atlantic, extending towards Greenland and towards Iceland. And we see the big areas of low pressure that have been sat over North and Canada heading towards Russia and Scandinavia. Now again, not turning us definitively cold here, but setting up a much different pattern, opening the door to some precipitation, more sunshine, sort of different wind flows, but also opening the door to potentially colder air. You can see we're not in very cold air. There's very cold air just to the north of Scotland, but we're not fully in it, and it is still far away. It is mid-November, we have to remember, so much of Europe is still relatively mild, so it is difficult to see very cold conditions. But we are setting up a pattern that could allow that to develop in the days and weeks following on from this. The only reason why I'm talking about this in a little bit more depth, and instead of just kind of shrugging it off as a sort of a longer range chart, is because we saw this exact pattern being shown in that winter look ahead on Thursday. And the main goal of those winter look aheads is to spot patterns and to see correlations between that and the daily runs that we look at. And we are seeing that right here. That's exactly what we saw from some of those week ahead charts, with high pressure sat out in the North Atlantic, not fully penetrating into the Arctic, showing a classic Greenland high, a classic northern block, but a North Atlantic ridge encouraging northerly or northeasterly flows. And it's exactly what we see here. So very interesting indeed. We'll have to keep a very close eye on this. And if you do look at the northern hemisphere, you can see the cold air is really getting pushed towards Russia and Europe, and as a consequence of that, could head our way in that longer term period. You can see that cold pool starting to appear here, with a very big mild pool developing across northern Canada, Greenland displacing that cold air to the east. So yeah, we'll have to see exactly how it does develop, but interesting signs here nonetheless from the extended range of the GFS. Now, if you compare to the GM, high pressure in control over the coming days, again, very similar to the GFS out towards day 7. And then we start to see a few shifts around that day 10 period. Not exactly the same as the GFS, but still seeing some shifts. We've got, if we look over the northern hemisphere, we're starting to see perhaps a bit of a shift with higher pressure extending towards Siberia and Russia in general. Again, not necessarily the same as the GFS, actually quite different. This high pressure was much further westwards, but it's still signs that a bit of a shift is coming within that northern hemisphere outlook. Again, we could end up still being mild and westerly, but we could also end up being cold and wintry towards that last half or third of November into maybe early December. It's all about how the northern hemisphere orientates itself and whether we do see this high pressure getting further northwards. So yeah, it's not as dramatic or as big a shift as the GFS, but it's showing signs of a bit of a shake-up in the North Atlantic and generally our side of the North Pole. So I have to wait and see, but interesting nonetheless. And then finally, if we look at the latest ECMWF, again, high pressure firmly in control. And again, as we head towards day 10, we still see high pressure right over the top of us, and actually no real big shifts here. It kind of sticks straight over the top of us, low pressure to our west, north and east, and not really any change, if we're being completely honest. Again, a little bit of high pressure extending into the Arctic, but really nothing too big to take note of. Atlantic doesn't look particularly active either, so it's kind of a bit of a lull still and actually keeping us in the exact same pattern we have now. So GFS shaking it up massively. GM showing signs of it getting shook up, but ECMWF not showing really anything substantial with any high pressure pushing northwards or kind of moving its orientation. And after you finish by looking at the latest ensemble, see the latest GFS. As you can see, over the next week to 10 days, we are looking bog standard, mild and dry, but a precipitation appearing in 7 or 8 days time. But again, that's so far away. Again, we'll have to wait for those shorter range runs, but for the time being it's looking dry and very mild. But you can see longer range, we inevitably do head back towards average, and there is quite a strong signal for that here and for a bit of a pickup in precipitation. So a fairly strong signal that we will be seeing a bit of a change back to something a bit colder. But again, we've still got to work out the exact pattern in that longer range. It's not, again, firing out anything too extreme at this stage, but definitely shows a shift could be arriving back to something more inclined with our average as we do head into the middle portion of the month. 2 meter temperatures still look fairly mild and again do drop off quite substantially in that longer range. So again, I know it's not amazing out there, it's not sunny, it doesn't feel like summer, and we're not seeing a sort of an Indian summer type pattern out there, which could be possible with these sort of air masses with the right wind direction. But it is mild compared to what it will probably be in a few weeks' time. You can already see here temperatures dropping off back down to maybe 9 or 10 degrees in London, and again that'll be a couple of degrees colder further northwards. And again, even though it might be a bit sunny then, there might be more breaks in the cloud, it will feel a lot colder. So do cherish this milder spell we've got now and drier spell. I know it's not amazing, but it is a lot better than what we can see this time of year. And finally, if we do compare it to the ECMWF ensembles, it's pretty much exactly the same. Very little precipitation next week to 10 days, well above average, and then a slow descent back towards average as we do head towards the middle of the month with an increase in precipitation. Again, in the final few days of this run, we do have some cold or very cold charts starting to appear. Again, just showing you the risk is going to be there as we head into the second half of the month. But again, no guarantees at this stage. We'll have to wait and see a bit more support for some of those GFS charts and sort of patterns we're starting to see develop. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.